it is.
Oh, there it goes. Yes, there you go. You're good. Good afternoon, everyone, for everyone that's here. Welcome to the May 2nd Public Safety and Justice Committee meeting. I am Supervisor Ellenberg, chair of this committee, and we are joined by Supervisor Wasserman, who is the vice chair. Can I ask the clerk to formally take attendance?
Supervisor Wasserman? Here. Supervisor Ellenberg?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Just in sharing a very quick update on my personal education in this realm, last month I shared the criminal justice institutions that I visited, and happy to say that this month got to spend some time in juvenile hall and actually twice at the ranch this week. And congratulations to Chief Garnett and all of the supports and team members that work to get us to the opening of the new the new dorm today. Okay, so we will move on to public comment. This portion of the agenda is set aside for members of the public wishing to speak or submit a written comment on items not on the agenda. Before we start, let me confirm that I have all of the speaker cards. Okay, I have a speaker card from Lindsay Austin that doesn't have an agenda item number. Can you let me know if that's a public comment? Yes? Okay, great. Then we have 4 speakers, each of whom will have 3 minutes to present their comments. And let's have Christine Clifford, Susan Bassey, Lindsay Austin, and Scott Largent. Come on up. Good afternoon.
I'm Christine Clifford with PACT and Silicon Valley Debug. I'd like to take a moment to discuss the classification system used in our jails. This is a system used to determine the custody and security levels of detainees, which drives their housing placement and the structured programs offered to them. A facility study done in 2014 by the MGD company and other studies done by experts the county hired and research done by the Prison Law Office found the classification system in the jails were used at the time to be outdated, partially homemade, filled with subjective opinions, difficult to administer, and lacking in statistical reliability or validity. They recommended replacement and for the end of placing custody inputs based on the subjective opinions of staff into detainees' records. At the time, staff could place custody inputs or pursue infractions based partially on a checklist of their own opinions regarding behavior. Among behaviors they could check off were sly, manipulative, and overly dependent. How these behaviors were measured is a mystery. Activities such as exercising in a group, sharing food, or who you played cards with, or who were housed with, whether you had a choice in that or not, could be seen as nefarious. Detainees were not given access to the information in their files, and yet this could determine their placement, access to programs, and follow them into trial or even into prison. With the advent of reforms, the system was replaced with a standardized instrument that helped to eliminate so many subjective opinions. In using this instrument, many detainees were moved to lower classification levels. In addition, many behaviors that were previously reported as suspicious or used to justify higher security levels are no longer deemed problematic or reportable. Part of what Debug does is accompany families into trial and settings for support. I've witnessed DAs and gang personnel and probation officers present old custody inputs that are up to 7 years old as evidence of gang activity, and it's used as part of their basis for pursuing criminality. In one case, this was presented by an officer that had not worked in the jail in years, and in another presented by an officer who never did. In 3 cases I sat through in the past year, the DA and officers were unaware that the new classification system would not report the behavior they were citing as problematic. And yet these old custody inputs continue to be presented as evidence of gang involvement or criminal intent, having a prejudicial impact on judges and juries. This can impact trial outcomes, possible gang enhancements, and sentencing recommendations made by probation. They can follow a detainee into prison and further impact placement and program access there. I ask that some dialogue about purging files or restricting the use of now meaningless classification information in prosecution is pursued. If the methods once used to create these custody inputs and classification rankings were deemed invalid, they should no longer be used in prosecution by gang intelligence or in writing probation reports. They are no longer relevant and should not be presented as evidence of anything except a broken and now obsolete classification system that had to be replaced. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Bassey. I'm a publisher of Ex Parte Media and Bassey Productions. I've been before this board many times, and I find it interesting that in the month following the report that my associates got on the Commission on Judicial Performance, reflecting that the CJP had failed to do their jobs, a report on the misuse of the assigned judge programs, and a report on the state auditor, on the state bar related to our state auditor's reports this last month, that our district attorney has sent a substitute, our sheriff is not here, our presiding judge is not here, and the IDO is not here right after I reported misconduct in all of those departments. I'm going to share, and I want these attached to the public record today. These are what we call reporter's notes. I have no problem sharing my work product. This is protected under evidence code, and I am releasing my privilege on this. Today I went to our courthouse because I'm investigating the use of Judge Lucas's orders from 2017 and 2018 related to standing orders that she issued to silence dissent of protesters. There were 2 sheriffs I spoke to in the civil courthouse. They referred me to Judge Ryan and her clerk, and none of them could come up with the order, but one deputy, badge number 1938, told me that he previously worked in the family courthouse and that they were selectively handing this out to silence protesters. I'd like that put into the record today related to my comments. The next thing that I have related to my comments is my complaint to the state auditor. I am assisting the state auditor with policies and procedures to check public records, court files, and my media sources related to complaints in this county regarding privately retained temporary judges used in family law cases. This is something that I brought to the attention of our district attorney in 2015. It results in billions, not millions, billions of dollars from people like your friend Walter Hammond, Ms. Ellenberg, who are converting community property by selling homes during divorces, by taking children from their parents, and escalating conflict in divorces. The state legislature stopped watching this in 2001. This is going before Nancy Skinner and other people running for office in 2020, and it will be reported just like SB 1421 issues were reported. Santa Clara County is the hub of this public corruption. There have been billions of dollars since 2001 removed from families and converted to private attorneys' profits. There is a rule of court that requires these to be posted, these cases removed from the court to be posted in the public lobby. There have been 2 court employees that have been concealing these cases regarding certain attorneys, Sharon Roper and James Cox. This is in my report to the state auditor, and they are going to come after your records to audit. You guys have all known about this since 2015. This is another report related to the media and what's going on in our TV courts.
Next speaker, please.
I'd like this put in, please. Thank you. Oh, this one too. They all need a copy and it needs to be in the public record. I like that.
Yeah, good work. I need to hear it. Oh, I guess I forgot something today. Oh no, actually, you can go ahead and go, Nancy. It's no problem. Piggy corn. Let me see. Okay. So I bring this big folder in here, and I also bring in my daughter's piggy corn. Important things to bring to meetings. This right here is the circus that I went through, going back and forth from DA's office, just the system in general to try to be in my daughter's life. I find out later that it is all sent back to family court. So there is really no enforcement for anything involving any type of civil orders in our county. I just think it is cruel that people sent me in circles for years. I have more than documented utilizing the family violence unit through the PD, our other family violence unit through our district attorney's office. Actually, that was the child abduction unit. That was a fun one to fill out forms, provide them more information, just to have them not do a single damn thing. we send these cases all back through family court to control them, okay? Now, if we had some type of enforcement for people, it would be a game changer. You know, just like just like the Domestic Violence Council, if we did the right things and ran men or women through court that had, you know, actual, you know, were women beaters, it would be a game changer. It would completely shift and change, okay? It would side the person that was being beat on. You know, basically they get custody of the children. It would just be a game changer. Why would we not want that to happen? And the other thing is when somebody does so many things to do the right thing, why are we not lifting that person up? Why are we not providing them with adequate legal counsel, even in family court? Because I shouldn't be getting clobbered. And my little girl right here, she deserves to have a father. And I come in here and I say, please, 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 why is this not happening right here? And I don't see any success stories of people getting off methamphetamines in our county. And I was looking through the coroner's report regarding the homeless. Are we considering those success stories now? Because I don't know where they're at. Are we getting people off of drugs? Are we getting people adequate mental health services? Where are these success stories? Because if I'm the only success story in Santa Clara County, why are you prosecuting me? Why are you keeping me out of my child's life? And why are you going after somebody that really doesn't have a record? And when I chose to do your drug diversion programs, and I chose to participate in all of this, where is the point where you start advocating for me? I did it all right here. I participated. I did it right. Who starts making phone calls? Who sends that letter to my ex to let her know, hey, this guy kicked ass. He did all this stuff. Let him be a dad. Instead, she thinks I'm absolutely batshit nuts coming up here. She trusts government. Your stuff does not work. We need more people to lift them up that did the right thing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello. Some of you know me from coming in here and speaking about the sexual assault I was the victim of, and the DA and the DA's victim services failure to help me. I wanted to read a letter from Christina Pimentel, who was his girlfriend for about 6 years on and off. It says, to whom it may concern, I've known Taylor Lee Christopher Yap since 2001. We dated off and on for 6 years and have a daughter who was born in 2005. I'm currently residing in Livermore with my daughter and fiance. I run my own small business and I'm in graduate school full-time. Although I keep my interactions to Taylor to an absolute minimum, as he is a toxic and abusive person, I am aware of some of his unstable and violent behavior towards women. Taylor is a volatile person who has been in and out of drug rehab numerous times. I have full custody of our daughter. He has supervised visitation every other Saturday during the day. Our relationship was horribly toxic. He would regularly verbally and mentally abusive, instigate fights, and then force me to stay in the room or house with them. There were times he pulled the phone out of the wall to prevent me from calling anyone, in addition to physically preventing me from leaving the house. One of the worst incidents involved him throwing beer bottles and a pickaxe at me, slamming my head against the stucco of the house while screaming at me how much he loved me and not to leave him. He insisted his behavior was my fault because I'd broken up with him and went on a date with another man. There were other times he would force himself on me sexually without my consent, partially when I was sleeping and particularly when I was sleeping and we were broken up, or continue sexual contact when I'd asked him to stop. Taylor was arrested back in 2006, if memory serves, for wandering into people's yards high in LSD, babbling and making threats. When police came to arrest him, he believed there were demons coming to pull him down to hell and resisted arrest, resulting in a police officer sustaining a fractured arm. His mother, who has a history of protecting Taylor from the consequences of his actions, hired him an attorney and managed to stay out of jail. He did, however, go to jail for 30 days in 2009 or 2010 for domestic abuse charges against his girlfriend at the time, Caitlin. Fortunately, I do not know her last name. Both Taylor and his mother, Corey Cayetano Smith, tried to hide his legal issues from me. September or October of 2013, Taylor was already on probation for drug possession and a road rage incident when he had another road rage episode. He attempted to run a lady off the road in Pleasanton, California for cutting him off. After following her for several miles, she pulled over and Taylor jumped out of his truck, approaching her window, screaming and brandishing a hammer. At the time, the male passenger of the car, Mike Prince, exited the vehicle and went to defend the lady driver. Taylor immediately ran back and jumped in his truck, locked and closed his door, and attempted to roll his window up.
Thank you. Speaker, please. Lauren Renaud. Renaud? Is Lauren here? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Lauren Renaud, and I'm here representing Showing Up for Racial Justice. We're just here to tell this committee that we were here on April 9th and that we continue to support the existing civil detainer policy, and we strongly hope that this board sees that changing the policy will have greater negative consequences than keeping the policy as is. We're also in support of number 8, the pre-arraignment representation and review. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the last public comment? Do we have any other cards? Okay, thank you. Then I will close. Will I? These are not public? Okay. We are closing public comment. And this takes us to the consent calendar. And I will turn first to Supervisor Wasserman. Are there any items that are not on consent that you would like to move in that direction?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to add number 8 on. I don't know if you still have a speaker for that or not. I know the last speaker just spoke to that. But if we have another speaker before voting on it, I'd like to hear from the speaker. So my motion would be to add 8 on to 9 and 10 that are already there, and I would recommend approval for all 3.
All right, I'm happy to do that. And what I would like to ask is that we take items 4 and 5 together as one item. Does that work for you?
Yep, but not on consent, right? When
Oh,
we get to
sorry,
4 and
regular
5.
items, right, thank you.
Okay.
We'll wait on that.
So the motion now
Okay.
is for items 8, 9, and 10 to be approved, and if you have any speakers
We've
for them.
got 2 speakers on item 8, Professor Ron Tyler and Scott Largent. Come on up, please. And you have 2 minutes, sir. Welcome.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Professor Ron Tyler. I'm a professor at Stanford Law School. I'm the director of the Criminal Defense Clinic at Stanford, and I'm here this afternoon to speak in favor of the pre-arraignment representation and review proposal that's before this board. I want you to know that the reason that I came during such a busy time in our quarter is because I'm really proud of the work that the Public Defender Office has done, and we collaborate with them and have done so really since 2012 in the representation of individuals who are members of our community who are facing charges before the courts here. But things changed dramatically a year ago with the Humphrey decision, which has provided the opportunity for a new level of collaboration. And since that time, Stanford students have assisted the Pretrial Justice Project in work to help judges hear the stories of people who have the right to return to the community, to return to their families, to return to their jobs early in the case. It's a great opportunity for our students, and it's a great opportunity for courts to do the right thing and make the right decision. The reason that I'm here to support this item number 8 is because it goes a step further and gives judges the opportunity to make these decisions early so that they have information by the time individuals come to arraignment. I think it's a great use of resources. It will mean that resources that would otherwise have to be spent in jail for folks who actually are not going to end up in jail don't have to be spent that way. So I urge you to approve item 8.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for coming down today. I think the clock needs to be reset to 2 minutes, please.
Madam Chair, if for whatever reason she needs to start at 1:57, I just suggest that we let Scott
Yeah,
talk for
that's-
3 seconds and then start the timer.
Certainly.
That's okay.
But 1:57, not 2:50.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. All right, we'll try
I'll
it that
take
way.
the 3 minutes and 57
Thank you.
seconds. Okay.
You will get your 3 extra seconds. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, great, perfect. Go ahead. I'm ready when you are. This was a weird, good afternoon, Scott Largent. This was a weird item to see on the agenda in regards to the Public Defender's Office. I've been a big critic of the Public Defender's Office, but I'm curious now, are we kind of getting ahead of the ball here? Are we doing preventative stuff prior to people actually getting thrown through the dragnet? I looked in the back. I started to kind of read the report and see what was going on. I want to start seeing things back there regarding our civil rights that are being violated. Maybe having a team put together that's going to look into what's happening to people like me, Victor, Susan, just for exercising our democratic values. Maybe we can put together a team like that. Why do they keep conflicting our cases? So if we want the Public Defender's Office and you over there, Molly, to be in fighting shape to handle all of our cases, why would they kick the can constantly to Sylvia Perez McDonald? I don't understand that. Do you guys find that kind of strange, that all these cases are being kicked down the line? How are we going to get Molly and her team in fighting shape if she doesn't get to handle these ones? And who's making that decision to conflict these out? That's what I want to start digging into the county. Who's making this decision? Is it coming out of James Williams? Is there a board that's put together that discusses these individual cases and say, hey, we're going to take this one and we're going to put him over here to micromanage him and we're going to kick it out of there? I think all the cases should go through you, Molly, the Public Defender's Office and the Alternate Defender's Office. This IDO scam, she plays puppet with people's cases. She can give you a horrible legal defense. She can prevent you from having investigators, and she can just rig it. And I've been able to expose what Sylvia Perez McDonald has been doing, and I'm really wondering, have we gotten smart and finally gotten rid of her? Has she been fired? Is that why she's not here today? Because you know what? That would be a thumbs up from Scott Largent right there to get rid of the scam right
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you.
We've got another speaker, Christine Clifford.
Hi again. I'm just here to submit a letter from Silicon Valley Debug in support of the pre-arraignment representation and review. I believe this was sent to Supervisors Ellenberg and Wasserman this morning, but want to put it into record. Debug does a lot of work in the courts and sits in arraignment daily, in felony arraignment, with families and helps them understand what's going on in arraignment court, plus takes what we call community ties information and tries to give it to the Public Defender's Office so that they can better represent the client before the judge and help impact release in a positive manner. Included in this is some statistics about how effective that methodology has been and how much that really in the long run saves you money and saves families from having someone incarcerated. But it also talks about the success of this in San Francisco and confidence that our county can, our Public Defender's Pre-Arraignment Review Unit would be an invaluable tool for justice in our county. So I just want to submit this for those of you who haven't been able to read it and be here to support item 8. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to note as well my appreciation for the report and that the whole board will hear this item 8. And I look forward to hearing it with my colleagues at that time. So if there are no other comments and no other changes to the consent calendar, we're ready to move on? Great, thank you. And now, before we move to the regular agenda discussion, I want to do two things. First, I see that now we've got just about everybody with us. I think the time change start may have thrown a few of you off. No problem. We've got another program here later this afternoon, so moved earlier to accommodate. But why don't we have everyone who's here introduce themselves for the record?
Good afternoon, Dr. Jordan, Medical Examiner, Coroner's Office.
David Angel, Assistant District Attorney, District Attorney's Office, standing in for the District Attorney, Jeff Rosen.
Hi, good afternoon. Laura Garnett, Chief Probation Officer.
Good afternoon. Molly O'Neill, Public Defender.
Good afternoon. Aaron Johnson, Director of Pretrial Services.
Hello, Deborah Ryan, Presiding Judge of the Superior Court.
Jeff Smith, County Executive.
Hi, good afternoon. Miguel Marquez, Chief Operating Officer.
Rob Coelho from County Counsel's Office.
Good afternoon. Gary Hersig, Deputy County Executive.
Great, thank you, everybody. And now I'd like to turn to my colleague and ask if, as we get into the regular agenda, are you willing to take items 4 and 5 together as one item?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then moving to item 4, I think the way I'd like to do this is hear both of the reports for 4 and 5, then take public comment, and then come to our questions.
Sounds like
That
a good
work?
plan.
All right. So we'll start with the sheriff's presentation on inmate grievances. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain David Sepulveda. I oversee the division that includes the grievance unit. With me today is Melanie Perez Jimenez and Lieutenant Joe Nguyen, who oversees the day-to-day operations of the grievance unit. I want to thank Chair Ellenberg for providing us with the opportunity to present today. The Sheriff's Office has made significant progress in ensuring a transparent grievance process with increased accountability. Changes to the grievance process began in 2015, and we have come a long way in our last 4 years. While we still have room to improve, we know we have a strong foundational data that can be used to identify trends and alert us to issues before they become problems. We are now armed with the information to make data-driven management decisions. Once we implement the new JMS, we'll be able to integrate our grievance data with inmate and facility information to provide needed content to our grievance data. Now, Lieutenant Nguyen will begin our formal presentation.
Good afternoon. I am Lieutenant Joe Nguyen, and I oversee the Sheriff's Grievance Unit. Pictured on this slide is a high-level overview of our grievance process. There are lock boxes throughout the facilities, and forms are available for inmates in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. The sergeants will collect grievances from the housing units and review them to identify the correct course of action. 85% of grievances submitted are related to routine issues such as phone, mail, or commissary, and that is pictured in the gray box right after the black box. Those grievances are routed directly to the grievance unit to enter into ACES, our electronic tracking system, and are then assigned to the appropriate sheriff's office unit. Approximately 15% of grievances are either emergent issues, such as a request for immediate medical care, simple solutions like requesting for additional blanket or cleaning supplies, or containing an allegation against staff. These grievances require an immediate action by the sergeant. Action taken is documented on a supplemental form, and then it gets routed with initial grievance to the grievance unit. The grievance unit will review all resolutions to ensure a proper response to the inmate. Allegations against staff can range from a deputy being rude, to a deputy being late to start out of cell time, to a deputy using force. The grievance unit determines the investigation is complete, or they close the grievance administratively for the Internal Affairs unit to take over the grievance as a complaint against staff. Pictured on this slide and attached to this report is a listing of all grievance categories and subcategories. These were developed based on the most common issues that are grieved. ACES is also a temporary solution until our jail management system can be implemented, and we will further refine these categories for JMS. We can run reports on grievance by category, subcategory, team, watch, facility, and each and every single inmate. The grievance unit analyzes all grievance responses and appeals to ensure a timely and thorough initial investigation is sufficient to ensure a fair resolution. Staff responding to grievances must resolve issues with documentation. Since the grievance unit is conducting a thorough review on the front end, we are providing meaningful initial responses. We committed to Chair Ellenberg that we would review our appeals, and we found that of the 222 contested dispositions, There were 6 where the commander of the unit was able to find an alternative solution. As a result, they overturned the initial grievance resolution. This slide contains a breakdown by category and facility. The grievance unit conducted an analysis of the staff conduct grievances and provided the analysis to the custody bureau captains and continue to do so on a monthly basis. This provides captain with information by team, event, and staff member. It also demonstrates how the grievance was resolved by coaching, mentoring, training, or corrective action. This report can also demonstrate that the highest subcategory was unprofessionalism, which includes grievances where an inmate did not like the way staff spoke to them. This information is also available in real time if captains want to go into the ACES system to see activity in their facilities. Pictured above are the top 5 grievance categories overall, along with the top 5 by facility. This is an overview of main jail and its subcategories and the 32 categories that were most grieved in the last year. This would be Elmwood Men's Facility, the overview. And the next slide is the Elmwood Women's Facility and the breakdown. And we are here to answer any questions.
Thank you. We're going to hold questions for a little bit, but stay there, please. Let's have the debug PACT folks, PACT, come on down to this side if you don't mind. And we'll hear your report and then do public comment. Is there room there? Does it want to go to the other side? Happy for you to sit wherever you're comfortable. I didn't realize there was still another seat there. Oh, okay, terrific.
Is this on? Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. Good afternoon, supervisors, committee, Sheriff's Department, and Chief of Corrections Smith. I will be very brief in my remarks. I'm here today not only as a representative of PACT, People Acting in Community Together, but also on behalf of other community groups who continue to be engaged in advocating for improving our county's jail system, among them Silicon Valley Debug, the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley, National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, Bill Wilson Center, and various clergy. For the better part of 2 years, the organizations I just mentioned have engaged in constructive dialogue with the jail administration, sometimes in individual exchanges, but more importantly, via regular semi-monthly meetings. With these meetings, we have together identified and collaboratively resolved several jail-related matters, among them jail clothing problems, commissary issues, medical service concerns, visitor policies and practices, and others. Unfortunately, around about September of last year, these meetings stopped, and we have been unsuccessful in reinstating them. 2 of the many important recommendations that resulted from the Blue Ribbon Commission and other reviews were to improve the jail grievance system and to improve and periodically assess the jail climate. It appears that the grievance system has improved, but we believe it can do better. With respect to climate, the sheriff engaged Gary A. Rainey Incorporated to perform a climate survey. This survey was based on a monthly climate survey Mr. Rainey used when he was the sheriff in Ada County, Idaho. Although the survey was done last year, it is not expected to be repeated until later this year. 2 point-in-time snapshots taken a year or more apart cannot show trends, nor can they, with any insight, show where improvement or regression may have occurred. However, our jail already has a tool for climate at their disposal, which, if they choose to use it, as we are suggesting, can provide the administration with a near real-time climate assessment. This tool is the jail's grievance system. It is important to note, and it must be emphasized, our Sheriff's Office is unique in its transparency with respect to jail grievances. Compared to what is published here in Santa Clara County, no other Sheriff's Office in the state publishes any kind of grievance data. As we learned earlier, our Sheriff's Office publishes numbers both in monthly reports and in semi-annual summaries. That being said, we still believe there is room for improvement. First, the grievance form allows detainees to file not only complaints, but also to submit compliments. However, beginning in January 2019, non-grievance items by facility have been excluded from the reports. Non-grievance items, especially compliments, can be a dramatic indication of a positive jail environment and culture and should be reported by facility. As shown above, the CCW, that is women's staff, have received compliments at a rate 10 times greater compared to main jail and Elmwood men. What's different about the climate in the CCW facility compared to the other two? Our recommendation in the monthly reports continue to include non-grievance numbers, specifically compliments by facility. Second, all the grievance reports show grievance numbers at each facility, and if the conclusions are drawn, they are based on jail-wide averages. However, since there are significant differences in population at each facility, the numerical dominance of Elmwood men can frequently obscure important grievance issues at the other facilities. If the grievance reports include grievance rates, that is, grievances per 100 detainees, important information may be revealed. As shown above, by reporting grievance rates, we see that medical grievance rates have been trending down since June of last year. This is a good thing. But the grievance rate for women has been consistently 2 to 3 times higher than main jail or Elmwood men. Why is this? Our recommendation: report grievance rates by facility in monthly reports. Next, numbers or rates themselves, even if reported monthly, may be interesting, but usually don't tell a complete story. 6 or 12-month trend charts can show at a glance if the climate is changing for the better or getting worse. Our recommendation: report grievance rate trends by facility in all reports. Also, while everyone, including me, wants to show their work in a positive way, it's important that we not reach conclusions based on speculation. Specifically, the latest biannual report concludes that the low level of grievance appeals, 3.8%, demonstrates a, quote, satisfaction of each meaningful grievance response, end quote. However, the low appeal levels could also be due to the detainees having concluded that appeals, 3.8%, are a waste of time. Given the data presented, each conclusion could be possible. Lastly, and perhaps most important for those charged with the jail's administration, use the data to establish specific departmental goals. By using already existing data, plus grievance rates and trends, one can establish realistic goals that can drive systemic improvement. For example, Custody Health could establish a 6-month goal of keeping every facility's medical grievance rate to less than 4 per 100 detainees. Likewise, the Sheriff's Office and DOC could establish a 6-month goal of maintaining the out-of-cell grievance rate at every facility at no greater than 2 per 100 detainees, as I've shown here with the green dashed lines. So in summary, we reiterate our appreciation for the Sheriff's commitment to grievance transparency, and we hope that the recommendations presented today will be seriously considered and implemented. Equally important, we sincerely look forward to restarting our semi-monthly community meetings with the jail administration. And finally, we must always remember that for the 25% of those in our jail who are actually serving a sentence, the true punishment of being in jail is their loss of freedom. It must not be loss of dignity, nor arbitrary or punitive behavior, nor an unhealthy physical or mental environment. By working together, we can continue on the path to improving our county jail. Thank you. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Again, we'll hold questions until we have heard from the public. And we have a number of comments. 1, 2, 3, Does anyone who's intending to speak on items 4 or 5 has already submitted a card? Great, then with 5 cards, we can allot 2 minutes per speaker. Kathy Forward, Barbara Hansen, Scott Largent, and Ryan Spector. Ryan Spengler, apologies.
So good afternoon. And we at NAMI Santa Clara County do want to point out that there's been tremendous progress in the last few years since Michael Tyree's death with the different commissions and committees. And we see a lot of good work being done at the CCP, jail diversion, the reentry center. As many of you may know, we do have an active family jail support group that did come out of all of the many calls that we continue to get from families whose loved ones end up in jail or in court. And for many, it's the first time, you know, they are there because of the symptoms of their illness. Many don't even know what they've done or understand what's going on. So they've been actively working, and we do have a good contact with Olivia Fojas. And we're really pushing the AB 1424 to be more recognized, and getting that information to her has been good. I did talk to them last night about this grievance process, and I understand there is a way that families can file a grievance if they need to, and I asked if the families are doing that. Their response was the families are afraid to do that because of retaliation. I don't really know what that means, but it is something that you should know about. I am concerned that the community meetings have been discontinued because, I think we were making good progress, and I think there does need to be transparency and openness, and this is how we are going to work out things and come up with creative solutions and have better collaborations. So I would encourage you to help the sheriff to do this, and let's keep trying to improve the communications. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Barbara Hansen with PACT, People Acting Community Together. And on the Sheriff's webpage, there's a list of 10 core values. They go from our principal missions, protection of life and property, down to others. There are 3 of which I would like to highlight. Number 3, we strive to maintain the highest level of public trust. Number 5, we value community partnerships. 6, we treat each other and the community with dignity and respect. Under the rubric of fidelity to these values on a scale of 1 to 10, poorest being the best, at the time of the Blue Ribbon Commission, this sector of the community would have rated the sheriff's office at nearly a 10. However, since November of 2018, this rubric has fallen to possibly a 0. Repeated requests for meeting with the sheriff's office has had no response. I want you to know that during that time of dialogue, we had authentic dialogue, relationships were established. We really felt that we were part of what was being done. We respectfully request of the sheriff's office that they renew observance of these core values, and I repeat them: strive to maintain the highest level of public trust. We value community partnerships. We treat each other and the community with dignity and respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Scott Largent. Founded allegations. I've only seen letters from our sheriff's department that are unfounded. So maybe this is just some golden ticket like the Willy Wonka thing, that it's out there somewhere, but I'm not seeing it. Maybe there's other members of the public that might be able to provide me with that. I'm not sure if I have to do that on a records request to get it out of our county. I think that they're just denying every single claim that goes through there. And I think it's a liability standpoint, because if people get community justice and they say it was a founded allegation, then the county is pretty much liable. So is that's what's going on. And then when we have court cases, for instance, and we're supposed to have, let's say we have an internal affairs case and they have a year to investigate it, If you're run through court or you're having criminal proceedings, they extend that even out farther. They wait till the outcome of the criminal proceedings to then follow with the actual internal affairs investigation, which is kind of weird because they'll basically take the court proceedings, all the transcripts and stuff, and you gotta be kidding me. They're gonna make it look like, you know, whatever the court outcome was. You know, I'm not stupid. So I want to see some founded allegations. I think that's community justice. I think we deserve to see that. And there's no way, I mean, I'm a critic of the Sheriff's Department, but there's no way there's not anything out there. There's no way that there's not a founded allegation. Maybe I'm just an idiot and I can't find it. Does anybody have that out there? Maybe somebody from one of these other nonprofits. Has anybody ever seen that? I have hundreds of letters from people that are unfounded. That's all I have, and I'd like to find ones that are. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Spengler, and I'm a patient's rights advocate at the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley Mental Health Advocacy Project. I work as a Santa Clara County jail advocate in charge of our intake line, which fields issues with mental health treatment in the county jail facilities. For the past 8 months and following the recent re-election of Sheriff Laurie Smith, collaborative meetings between community advocacy groups and the Sheriff's Office administration have ceased to occur. Organizations such as the Law Foundation, PACT, Debug, NAMI, and others have been shut out and left with a plethora of unanswered questions and complaints from the people of Santa Clara County. Now that the legal proceedings of the consent decrees for the jails have finished, it's time to reinstitute these meetings to ensure that the Sheriff's Office agrees to listen to the voices of the many advocates in Santa Clara. The Sheriff's Office has failed to respond to many serious concerns of our organizations, such as a policy for the use of tasers in the jail, limited maximum withdrawals of inmates' personal funds, and restricted program time for our mental health clients in custody, just to name a few of the issues that have gone unresolved for the past 8 months. We look forward to continuing the constructive, collaborative efforts that once existed with the Sheriff's Office and this county. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. That concludes public comment. I'd like to start with some of my feedback first by thanking both the Sheriff's Department and Mr. Hansen for these reports. And it's really encouraging and impressive to me that there are so many community organizations that are deeply engaged in this work and paying attention to people who are very often forgotten once they're incarcerated. So I, for one, really appreciate that and think that it's significant to the culture of our county that we have that kind of involvement. I want to start with a couple of questions for the sheriff's team. The percentage of grievances that are resolved in a timely fashion is impressive. Can you tell me how is timely defined?
Supervisor Ellenberg, timely is we set a goal date of 30 days once this grievance has been submitted. We have a timely responsiveness of 30 days, so we provide a meaningful response to the inmate within 30 days or less. That's our timely benchmark.
It's hard to tell if that's in sort of a vacuum. It's a little bit hard to tell if 30 days is adequate or if people are asking about resources or things that they need in a much faster fashion. Do you break down by types of requests further within those 30 days?
Absolutely. The 30-day mark isn't for every grievance. Some grievances are actually resolved within a day or 2 days or a week, but it's really based on the level of investigation or reaching out to other business units. Sometimes that takes a lot longer or takes additional time for them to do their own investigation. If it's commissary or medical or something else related, we have to reach out to other business units to do their investigation. And so that's why we have the 30-day mark. But it doesn't mean that all grievances are answered at the end of that 30 days.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we do end user surveys or some kind of follow-up to close the loop with people who submit grievances to make sure that they are adequately satisfied? Or that their grievance has been appropriately addressed, I should say.
So our supervisors out in the facilities are charged with delivering back the grievance resolution to the inmate, and they have a opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with the inmate, and if the inmate is not satisfied, they can either appeal it or they can discuss what their dissatisfaction is with the supervisor.
And are we tracking that data as well, other than through the formal filing of appeals?
No, I think we're only tracking if there needs to be further resolution, or if the supervisor feels that they have to go back and do something else, then we would have to reopen that and track that in that fashion. But if it's a general conversation, it's not tracked.
And can you give me any examples of policies that have been changed on a larger scale as a result of grievances?
So I can give you an example that's come up recently. We have a process with commissary where the commissary is passed out. The inmate is supposed to check their commissary when the vendor is there with them and verify that everything is there before they open the bag. We ran into some issues where it was taking longer, so we now have the housing deputies verifying the name on the wristbands to speed that process up, then moving them to the vendor so that they have adequate time to open their bags. Before, it was just kind of commissary, everybody get together, let's get it passed out and keep moving. Because we were getting a lot of complaints that inmates were not having adequate time, or that someone else was getting their commissary. So we looked back at the logs and the footage and everything that was going on to change the process a little bit.
Thank you. I believe that the another policy change that came about as a result of grievances was was removing the fees for feminine hygiene products as a result of women grieving that those cost money or too much money. Is that a correct memory?
I don't know that we got formal grievances. It was more of we would like to have more options, but some of the things that have been maybe added to commissary or lowered prices on commissary have been from grievances.
There's still a cost?
For other products.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you. I really want to thank you for this report today. I appreciate the sheriff's commitment to transparency and the diligence in posting monthly grievance data. I think there was an error on one of the ledge files, so I want to just state on the record that if members of the public are interested in reviewing the data, they can do so at the sheriff's jail reform page by Googling Santa Clara County Sheriff Jail Reform, and the link at the top will take you to the correct page. And turning to Mr. Hansen, I think that the data you're providing appears to be incredibly useful, and what I heard from you and some of the public commenters is that you're missing having that opportunity to engage directly with administration, and that those bi-monthly meetings really provided tremendous value. And seeing the data that you've presented today, it's clear that working together we can probably do a little bit better for inmates who are in our jails. And I'm wondering if anyone from the Sheriff's Department is empowered today to make a commitment that we can return to those, or that your groups can return to those meetings.
That is something we can take back to the sheriff.
Wonderful. And could you send us, please, an off-agenda report within the next week, letting us know what the conclusion is on that?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is all I have. Supervisor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last 3 pages, one of the presentations, you had bar graphs. The first largest grievance was staff conduct and behavior. And I certainly understand that being the largest. That's a very subjective category as far as that goes. That didn't surprise me at all. The number 2 category, medical services. When you review those complaints, is it that they can't get appointments in a timely fashion? That they what do most of the medical services complaints or grievances consist of? A chart within a chart. If you know.
Oh, no, we have a breakdown of medical services. So for medical services, we're looking back at the year's worth of data. For the top subcategory would be
Excuse me, is this in the PowerPoint and I missed it, or are you looking at something else?
No, this is the report that we submitted.
Okay.
This is the page 6 of 12 on the report that we submitted.
I have page 6 of the PowerPoint?
No, not the PowerPoint, the report that we sent.
Page 6 of 12, all right. Okay, medical services. So number 1 complaint was accommodations, number 2 was appointments. So I assume appointments was the impression they couldn't get one timely enough.
Yes, sir.
That's what I would guess.
Yes, sir.
And then the accommodations means what?
Accommodations could range from, I don't like the bandage that was given to me, the medication that was provided. It's just whatever medical accommodations that could be given to the inmate by medical staff. That's something that I can't speak on, but that's what we categorize as in the grievance unit, where based on accommodations. So inmates don't like certain accommodations, and they would put it on paper. So.
Okay, and that comes under accommodations. And is it fair to say every grievance or complaint that you receive, you have totaled in here? You don't pick any out and say, that really doesn't qualify?
No, everything that's...
So you've got them in here regardless?
Regardless.
Okay. So, okay. Again, that's very fair of you to do. I'll just say that. By including everything, that's very, very fair. So I guess it's hard for any of us to discern major, minor, give any kind of value to that. But what you're doing here is being totally transparent by reporting everything that you receive.
Every single submitted grievance we track, we disseminate, and we subcategorize, including inmate request forms and positive comments as well.
Okay. Okay. So if an inmate gets an appointment in 5 days and they wanted 2 days, that could result in a grievance.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to just follow on with the grievances as we're talking about medical grievances, but the white cards are actually separate. So tell me how the grievance process overlaps with medical requests.
So the white card system is specifically for inmates to submit something directly to our medical staff, bypassing any other staff in the jails. This is a one-on-one direct information passing from the patient to their medical provider. What they put on those white cards could be anything from requesting appointments to some types of complaints. It's a wide variety of things. The grievance system is set up so that our inmates can submit any complaint or issue they have concerning their conditions of confinement, and that would include medical care. So could there be some of the same types of matters submitted on a grievance form? There can be, absolutely. It's just another avenue for them to provide a grievance complaint. And what we do is once we receive those, we direct those directly to our medical providers, whether it's dental, medical, or mental health.
And then how do you track the resolution of those once you've handed them off?
Those are tracked. Once it's entered into the grievance ACES system that we have, it's tracked all the way through. So we send the grievance to our custody health provider. They have access to the system to review and answer the grievances themselves. And then it comes back to the grievance unit. We analyze it to make sure that the issue has been resolved before sending it to the supervisor to provide to the inmate. So it's tracked all the way through on the grievance side.
And it's custody health is tracking the white cards?
Custody health tracks the white cards.
Okay.
We have nothing to do with the white cards at all.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right. Then we will conclude this item. Thank you all very much. Moving on to item 7. Is that correct? Oh, item 6. No. We'll do it in order. 6, and we have a presentation, yes?
Thank you for your patience while we get situated. We're going to do introductions first. Martha Wapensky, Deputy County Executive.
Dolores Morales, Probation Department.
Arcel Vasquez Bluma, Office of Culture Competency.
So the Juvenile Justice Systems Collaborative, it's a collaborative that includes county departments, but it also includes parents, law enforcement, judges, faith-based, city partners, school superintendents, unions, victim advocates, and most importantly, youth advocates. This diverse group tackles issues and interventions to reduce disproportionate minority contact and confinement of youth of color. It's a way for all the system partners to work together on initiatives that reduce unnecessary detention. The bulk of the work is done by the 2 work groups you see up there, the Race, Equity, and Justice Systems Work Group and the Race, Equity Through Prevention Work Group. I'm not going to go through this entire slide, but this is our quarterly report to Public Safety and Justice on the work that's been done over the last few months. As you can see by the slide, there's a broad, JJSC covers a broad swath of topics from the work being done in schools to neighborhoods to legislation and everything in between. I'm going to turn it over to Dolores Morales to talk about the Race, Equity, and Justice Systems Work Group activities over the last few months.
Thank you. The Race, Equity, and Justice Systems, REJS, these committees comprise of various system partner focused on race equity, promoting child well-being, and reducing racial and ethnic disparities related to youth currently involved in the justice system while striving to improve processes. The first committee is the Electronic Monitoring Program, known as EMP. The program is used to reduce the use of detention when appropriate. Highlights of this group include research on electronic monitoring program in other jurisdictions, data analysis on the current use of the program, and the Youth Advisory Council is working on conducting focus groups with youth and parents. The High-Risk Youth Subcommittee is a brand new committee focusing on youth who have 3 or more serious offenses. We have identified a group of youth. We have conducted a random sample to do a deep analysis of all their cases. In this reporting period, we had 2 subcommittees that have sunset. The Transfer Setting Hearing, formerly known as the Fitness Work Group. This committee has been going on and meeting for 6 years. Due to how the cases move through the system, this committee will be reporting to REJS twice a year. Lastly, the discretionary bench warrants was a pilot program implemented to allow for discretionary release at screening of some youth with existing warrants when they're brought to juvenile hall. The policy aims to ensure safety of our youth, their families, and the community while continuing to reduce racial and ethnic disparities in the justice system. Highlights of this program include development of policy, flyer and marketing strategy for communication, staff training, and ongoing tracking and monitoring.
The Racial Equity Through Prevention Work Group has the goals of reducing racial disparities as it relates to school suspensions and expulsions, to increase student school engagement, as well as to engage youth in justice system reform efforts in partnership also with REJS. The following presents some key highlights of discussions and work projects of the Racial Equity Through Prevention Work Group. First, the Office of Women's Policy and the Vera Institute presented on their developing strategies to end the incarceration of young girls with a focus on girls of color and LB and gender nonconforming in Santa Clara County. This work that started in September 2018 in partnership with the Juvenile Justice Gender Responsive Task Force will bring together child serving systems and prevention partners to identify Santa Clara County specific solutions that can be institutionalized. Vera and the Office of Women's Policy will regularly present their progress on this work to REP. In the third bullet, a team from the Office of Student Services from Eastside Union High School District presented on efforts to address racial disparities through their Equitable Communities program. The program is focused on ensuring that all students are welcomed as they are, to identify student strengths and areas of growth, and that school staff respond to student behavioral concerns through a racial and social equity lens. This work has been informed by two committees, one with adult stakeholders and the other with Eastside Union High School District students. The two committees review the data, policies, and practices and develop recommendations, which the district is now implementing. Finally, the Burns Institute presented on a draft plan to conduct an analysis of all Santa Clara County high schools to identify areas, they're going to present, it hasn't yet happened. They presented the plan to identify areas of opportunity to reduce racial disparities in school suspensions and expulsions. REP members provided recommendations to strengthen the analysis by including a review of gender by race ethnicity. Secondly, REP members recommended that once high schools with the greatest opportunities for intervention are identified, to conduct a second analysis to review racial disparities in suspensions of the feeder middle schools. This two-step analysis will help identify high school and or middle school partnership opportunities to conduct student diagnostics to dismantle policies and practices that pose barriers to student school engagement. Thank you.
And with that, we'll take questions.
Thank you. Let me first turn to my colleagues on the dais for any questions or comments. And also want to note that should you turn a light on that I miss or don't see, please don't stand on ceremony. Speak up, let me know that I'm not looking the right way. Do you have any comments? All right, I have a few. Thank you first very much for this work. I think it's another really important part of the culture of our county. I have a few questions about the Burns reports. The ledge file doesn't have the report or findings that are discussed here. Do we have findings yet, or are we just organizing them to do the research?
They're doing the research right now, and they'll be presenting their findings in June. So what happened was that they presented their plan of analysis to REP, and then we provided input, REP members provided input, such as, for example, looking at the data by gender and race ethnicity, as well as thinking about how do we, once we identify the high schools, how do we also look at some of those risk factors that might be observed in middle schools. So they are working on reviewing the data right now.
And who will they initially be presenting that data to?
Who will they, excuse me?
You said they'll be presenting the data in June.
REP, yes, to the Racial Equity through Prevention Work Group in June.
Okay. I would like to hear that data as well.
Okay.
Can we can discuss doing that either as an off-agenda report or an item to be included?
Yeah, we'll be including
on the
that
PSJ
data
memo.
analysis. We'll be including the report when we do our next quarterly report to PSJC.
Okay.
You can certainly send it ahead of time once we get it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just a last quick question about the Neighborhood Safety Unit annual report. Is it possible to include the Burbank neighborhood in future reports?
We can definitely ask.
Happy to take that answer offline if it's not something that's easy to commit to right now, but that's a neighborhood that has a lot of the same statistics and demographics and of personal interest because it's in D4, and we've hit a lot of neighborhoods on the east side of San Jose, and I want to make sure that we're really looking holistically at the city and the county and making sure that we're not making presumptions about where need is highest.
We'll definitely get back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Chief Garnett.
Yeah, so the Neighborhood Safety Unit operates by zip code, And there were 2 zip codes that were chosen to launch those efforts,
Right,
and it
95122.
hasn't. And yes, it's a phenomenal grassroots, like really cool crosswalk soccer field kind of program, but it has not expanded countywide. And we will certainly go back and discuss that neighborhood and discuss possible expansions.
It is a fantastic program. I actually have worked with Charmaine Moran and see the tremendous work that they are doing at Valley Palms. And if that's a program that we're seeing success in, it would be interesting to talk about expanding that to other neighborhoods or zip codes or neighborhoods within zip codes that need that support as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Anything else on that item? All right. Yes, please.
I think it could be, we all kind of know, but one of the most critical pieces of the work that they're doing is preventing a lot of the youth that normally enter into the justice system through the schools. And so I know that we've learned that over the past 15 years in doing the work since we started to do the disproportionate minority confinement and contact. But it's really wonderful to see all that work being done now, particularly now when we're very conscientious about the negative impact that we have in youth once we get them into the justice system. So I think it's a wonderful investment of our time and resources as a county to focus on schools not being a feeder into the system.
Yes, and investing as much as we can preventively rather than symptomatically afterward. Any other comments on this item? Okay, report received. Right. And we will move on to item number 7. Right, teeing up the remote, the clicker.
Good afternoon. Again, thank you. My name is Aaron Johnson. I'm the Director for Pretrial Services. We were asked to present information in regards to eligibility and ineligibility of pretrial services at different times when we provide the assessment to the courts. So our Just Ask campaign, to me, I speak for myself, but I think for our other stakeholders as well, has been very successful. This graphic is a piece that we will be adding to the information that we're providing to the public, as well as those that are in custody, to give them an idea of all the different ways they could possibly be released. In the information that I presented in the packet overall, pretrial services, again, at the pre-arraignment stage, there are differences between who's eligible and who's not, and that difference is pretty significant once you move to the arraignment process. So I'll move to the next piece. I don't want to sit and just read through all the different pieces here, but basically, release on OR is in the Constitution. It's typically supposed to be utilized as the first idea that you're going to be released on OR, and then if there are mitigating circumstances that you would not be eligible for that, that's where the rest of the statutes and penal code pieces come into play. So when we're just talking about pre-arraignment, this information is presented and gathered by our jail staff who work 24/7. They complete the assessment, they complete an interview if the person is available, and we are able to catch them before either they post bail and or move to a different location. But we try to continue to verify the information that we've been given and follow up with them as we can. 1270.1 is the largest penal code ineligible reason that somebody could not be released pre-arraignment. These are typically your severe and violent felonies and some different charges. Our next piece is 1319.5. Again, these are 2 penal codes that basically, if you're arrested and charged with these type of crimes, you are ineligible per the statute. Now, I will say that regardless of public safety, if a bail amount is set on these cases, which there typically are, an individual can post bail and be back out as soon as they collect the funds and have somebody post the money, or they post it themselves. So again, money bail doesn't have an effect on public safety, especially when we see that, by statute, these folks are not eligible to be released under our supervision, but they can just post the arbitrary amounts of bail and be back out on the streets. When they go to arraignment, basically, again, the two penal codes that designate kind of how that works. The 1270.1 is requiring the hearing to be held in open court, so it can be argued by the attorney of record and the DA in front of the judge. Our court assignment folks also present arraignment reports. We follow up with those who are not released through our office in the jail, and they're presented and eligible again. And we make those recommendations to the court, and that information is given to the district attorney, the the attorney of record, public defender's office, or private attorney, as well as the court to review. For those, this is a little confusing, and I saw that, again, I created this slide knowing what I was talking about, and then I read it out loud, and it didn't quite make sense. So for pre-arraignment, of those arrested and booked into Maine jail, only 21% are eligible for pre-arraignment release. And again, that goes back to the many qualifiers that individuals, depending on their charge, depending on holds, there are different lists of reasons that can keep somebody from being eligible to be released pre-arraignment. However, at arraignment, many of those go away. Almost everybody is eligible for release at arraignment. However, there are many different ways that occurs as well. And so of the eligible cases presented at arraignment, only 21% were released to pretrial services. So again, you have people that post bail, you have people that the judge may not go with the recommendation and they keep them in custody for different reasons, but all of that is on the public record and available as far as the decision process. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Molly O'Neill, Public Defender. Thank you for that presentation, and I followed the last slide. So I wonder if part of that last slide includes cases where your office recommended release and people were not released. Do you have those percentages?
Correct. We do have those percentages, and I can share those off agenda if the other individuals would like to know that.
But that's not included in your second?
That's not included, okay. No, correct.
Okay.
We went through and looked at the overall data for 2018, and we're looking at those that we actually, that were eligible under our presentation.
Okay, thank you.
I imagine there's some that go the other way as well, where you do recommend for release, but a judge overturns that.
Correct. And then there, again, depending on the assessment, depending on staff reviewing those cases, we also would not make a recommendation for release on some of those as well. So.
Questions for that? Anyone down there? I think this is a really interesting and intriguing proposal, and I understand that San Francisco has a model. You didn't specifically address the weekend booking, but I understand that the purpose of this is to get people through and out as quickly as possible when it's safe and appropriate to do so.
Correct.
Tell me what happens if somebody is arrested or comes in and is booked on Friday after work hours. Is there a process to get them out?
So typically how that occurs currently is the officers in the field have the ability to cite and release based on their criteria. So those that they do arrest and bring into main booking, there are more criteria for cite and release by the sheriff in the main jail. And so there's another group of people who could be cite and released, and those are folks that we wouldn't see, and they would be out. Again, our staff do the assessment for everybody that comes in, but not everyone that comes in is eligible. And so those that are eligible, we present to the duty and the night judge for review, and once they make that determination on if the individual is going to be released on OR or SORP, or they're not going to approve the release, we let them know, we transfer that information back out. Now, past that point, the way that they could still be released is if the judge doesn't find probable cause for the case, an individual can post the entire bail amount if that's what they choose to do, or they can utilize a bail agent to be released
And
at that time.
where do the public defender and district attorney come in this process?
In our current process, they come in for arraignment, and that is per statute, kind of what I referenced earlier. But I think if
But we're looking to do it earlier.
if we're talking about number 8, agenda item number 8, we're looking to try to determine, how soon we can get counsel aboard to start reviewing those cases instead of waiting for the 48 to the 72-hour period. Not, again, to your point, not being able to review it until Monday or, on a holiday weekend, not until the next business day.
And I would just add, we very much look forward to presenting on agenda item number 8. I know it went on consent today, but when it comes back before the full board, we will really flesh out how we intend to get in between arrest and arraignment in a way that we really have never done before.
Okay, good. I will look forward to that conversation and get more information at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor. Just to add, I think what you're referring to is the San Francisco weekend DA filing program, where they make filing decisions on Saturdays and Sundays. For those cases that they don't file on, they can be immediately released, and they don't have to wait till the Monday or Tuesday.
And I understand that there are other challenges with that system in terms of how they're tracking data and measuring whether it's in fact effective. But as to the weekend part, that means that they have both public defenders and district and ADAs there through the weekend?
The district attorney's office has DAs there reviewing cases as they come in to make the filing decisions. If they do file, then the public defender's office will pick up representation on Monday.
And do we do that as well, or are we looking to do that? And I'm looking at the DA's representative.
I believe the proposal in front of the board is currently not about weekend filing representation. It's instead about, I think, what the public defender will discuss and that we work collaboratively on. Basically, it's looking at a number of ways so that these decisions can be made. Decisions about release can be made earlier and can be made sequentially. So in other words, there's often going to be cases where safe release maybe is not appropriate on hour 7 of day 1, but it might be appropriate 3 or 4 days later. Under our current system, it's very hard for that to ever get revisited. Once that decision has been made, it's very binary. I think what perhaps you're alluding to and what Gary is referring to is a different phenomenon, and that is if we had staff here 7 days a week, then prosecutors could presumably, they could be issuing, or what everyone else on the planet calls filing cases, 7 days a week instead of just 5. And that would, certainly you would get to things quicker, and where presumably the advantage would be not so much in cases that we file, because those are going to be in custody and need review anyway, but are going to be in those, I don't know the statistics offhand, but there's a small but not insignificant percentage of cases that we don't file on, and those people obviously don't need to be in custody once that decision's been made.
3 or 4 days. Great. I had understood that these were all related to number 7, but I want to just make sure that we're not bleeding into item 8, since we did move that to consent, and we'll hold the rest of that conversation, I think, with the full board. Did you want to add something, Erin? Anything else? All right, then that item is deemed received, and without objection, we'll adjourn. Thank you very much. The next meeting we have is the date. Thank you. We will adjourn to the May 9th budget hearing at 10 a.m. That agenda is light, so we anticipate that will be a fairly short meeting, but please remember the change in time. I did say 10 a.m. Confirming 10 a.m. Okay, so the agenda is evidently incorrect. We will send out a correction. It is at 10 a.m. on May 9th. All right. And without objection, we will stand adjourned.